Welcome to Godsplaining, Contemplative Preachers, Contemporary Age. Each week, join the Dominican friars as they consider all things Catholic.
Welcome to Godsplaining. It's great to have you with us today. I'm Father Joseph Anthony Kress, and on this episode of Guestsplaining, I'm joined by Father Bonaventure Chapman. Father Bonaventure, how are we doing today? You're helping us being a co-host.
Doing great. We've been doing, Father Joseph Anthony and I have been doing stuff. We're the backbenchers, as we say. For the big guns and out, but we've been doing things. But we've balanced. It's like a seesaw. So like, even though we're lower class, Godsplaining Dominican friars, we have ramped up with our high quality Emmy-winning guest that's coming on. So I'm just going to shoot it right over to you there, because you see in the background, listeners. Well, actually, if you're listening, you don't see, but you could imagine what an Emmy looks like. It's like an Oscar except with wings, and that's what's showing. So flip over to YouTube if you get a chance to see them.
Yeah. We have Rob Kaczmark from Spirit Juice Studios with us today. We're so excited to have Rob with us. So Rob, how are you doing? Give us a quick little intro on you and the work that you do with Spirit Juice.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on the show. I've watched you guys a lot on YouTube, so being on it is like very meta. I actually don't even know what meta means, but I feel like that's what it is. So
we'll go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like looking at it. It's like one of those. It's like a mirror with a mirror behind it, where you just keep looking. You think, is this go on infinite loop or something?
Yeah.
So just when you're looking at yourself doing something, watching yourself again, then yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's actually the best explanation I've heard of it. I feel like that puts meat on it. So yeah, well, my name is Rob Kaczmark. I am the owner of Spirit Juice Studios. I've been running it for it's going on 15 years. It'll be 15 years in August.
15 years. That's awesome.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been it's crazy to think that it's been that long, and even it actually existed before that too as a radio show for a few years prior. But essentially, we do Catholic videos, so people hire us to make videos, and we try to do our best with that. And we, just have the opportunity to work with a lot of awesome clients. The Dominicans is one. We've got the chance to work with you guys several times, which has been fantastic. Probably most famously, people have maybe seen some of the work we've done for Bishop Barron with Word on Fire. A few years ago, we did The Veil Removed, which is that short film on the Mass, and kind of like revealing, the angels and saints and heaven touches earth during the Mass. Knights of Columbus, a whole bunch of different stuff. And then throughout that, we create some of our own original content. So Catholic content that we feel like no one else is making, and we feel like, needs to be out there too. So.
No, that's awesome. I've been such a big fan of your work, and it was a joy to kind of start working with you and the entire studio and all the different videographers and photographers and everything. I think it goes back. I started working with y'all with World Youth Day in Krakow. And then as the Catholic world is, we just cross paths again and again and again. So it's such a joy to see the kind of Spirit Juice, bright green logos showing up all over the place. It's a legit Catholic event when Spirit Juice shows up. So that makes us, I think, a legit Catholic podcast now, because Spirit Juice is with us now, which is great.
Yeah, we'll take it. Man. Now, Rob, question, because I didn't look at this or find this. Because I was going to Google. You can Google anything you want to know. You can Google it. And I was going to Google why the name Spirit Juice. But I thought, why would I ask a computer when I could cast a human face? So because Spirit Juice initially, you might think, oh, this must have smoothies or something. But tell me, where'd the name come from?
So, like any good Catholic, when you try and think of a name, you initially go to, let's go to Latin, right? Because I feel like
that's right.
Got to, you have to. I feel like you got to check that box, even if you don't actually do that. So that's where we went, and Holy Spirit's been kind of in my own life has been really the motivation to do so much of my stuff as the Holy Spirit's moved. So, anyways, we went to Latin, and the Latin for Holy Spirit is Spiritus Sancte. So someone said, "What about Spiritus?" And the other person said, "Yeah, Spirit Juice. That's pretty good." And they're like, "No, I said Spiritus, not Spirit Juice." And then it was like, let's just do Spirit Juice.
Wow. See, that's the coolest part. This is why you've been on for 15 years, I suspect, because most people think businesses like carry on forever. You start a business and just carry. No, it's like religious orders. Majority of religious orders fail. majority of businesses fail, even more than religious orders sometimes. But like you came to the mark where someone said, "Oh, you mean the spiritus?" And one way you would go is say, "Spiritus, let's stick to the Latin." But you guys went the other track and said, "No, spiritus, that's great," and I love that. That's why you're here.
Thank you. I mean, it was. Yeah, I feel like it's what God wanted. God speaks to us, and sometimes we listen and sometimes we don't. And if we don't, it's not like the world's going to end. But if we could hear His voice and kind of go to that, I feel like the path's going to be a little bit easier, a little bit better, and more peace.
Yeah, it's going with the grain.
For sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I want to talk about in this episode today, one of our Guestsplaining episodes. So Rob, I want you to guestsplain for us, but the kind of art of storytelling. And the reason that this has been part of our discussion and what we want to discuss in this episode is so much of evangelization and really the entirety of sacred scripture is telling a story. It's telling the story of salvation history, telling the love story of God and man, and how that kind of gets incorporated into our life as Catholics in this work of evangelization that we do. But in your work, you kind of have taken that on as this major kind of life's work, is to tell stories well and how you engage in that. But so we're going to kind of break this down in multiple ways. But when you approach this, but how important is storytelling, the art of storytelling for you in the work that you do?
I mean, you ask any filmmaker and they're going to say story's king. And it's true. Like if you're trying to put a video together, it doesn't matter how, just look at the box office. You look at films that have big budgets, but a bad story, and the numbers help people, it'll resonate with it. Filmmaking it's such a unique art form because it's one of the most expensive art forms you can do. It requires so much, right? So you want to write a good book, you have to just be good with your words, and that's about it. You have a pen or you have a laptop or whatever it is. But with film, there's so many just nuances and so many details that if you don't get everyone right, it's oftentimes hard to have it really connect with people and translate. And so storytelling, and also with filmmaking, storytelling is not just the story, but it's so many things that go in with that. The cinematography, what you're saying with that, the music, just what you see visually on screen, how the production design, storytelling. Ask any filmmaker in their whether they're a production designer, whether they're a cinematographer, whether they're an actor, their storytelling in each small nuance of it. And I think that's where the magic really happens. When it's Hollywood magic. It's those small things that come together to make something that you can't put your finger on. You don't know, when you think about it, you're how does that all work? It's a lot of small, really fine details that make it work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as you were explaining this, I was thinking about the facets of it and the modalities involved. And storytelling, it is storytelling, but it's almost world creating. Your job is to create a virtual kind of world. And then we say virtual reality and such, but really, you've got to get all of the senses in there. And you're trying to, even the senses that you can't get through, you're trying to be able to carry on, piggyback of things you can get through. So you want people to be able to smell or feel, even though they can only see or hear, that kind of stuff. So the story, and in that sense, it's a creative aspect. I think that the storytelling, C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien, for instance, when they talk about creation as being like a story being told or sung, you could say, is similar here. You are creating a world by telling a story through all these different dimensions. And it's almost harder than if I'm telling a story at the refectory table or something. I'm just using my words and my voice and the cadences. But you've got to get all that stuff. So you're really, it's an act of creation or recreation in a sense as a story. Which is tough. The divine can do it, and you work as best you can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And you also have to go with people's perception, of how they view the world and what type of world you are creating. Is it the real world? Is it a fantasy world? You look at, we'll take Marvel and DC, for example, where Marvel, all the cities are real cities. You have New York, where in DC, it's Metropolis or it's Gotham. Yeah. And so just with that, I point that out specifically because as soon as you say it's New York, you think of everything that goes along with New York. And does it have that? Does it have that bridge? Does it have da? But when you talk about a fake world, you still have the notion of like what a city should look like, but you're not expecting certain things. And so no matter what world you're building, whether it's a real or a pretend world, your audience is going to have, a notion of what that is. And so it's one of the small things that plays into that world building. But I mean, we do narrative storytelling, but a lot of stuff we do is documentary, which you still have to play by those same rules, but I want to say it's even more challenging. It's just a different set of challenges rather, in being able to, and how you tell that. That's kind of a whole nother thing, but it all plays into it.
But I think that I'm happy you bring that up, because I wanted to go in that way. Is like the work that you do is taking kind of real life events. You're doing documentary work, and then you're presenting this in a unique and engaging way that kind of brings the audience into those experiences. And so out of what motivated you to say like, okay, when we do Catholic media and I want to do Spirit Juice, like led by the Spirit, why did you go towards documentary styles of telling real life stories instead of like formative things or things like that? Like, yeah, what kind of led you there?
So let me just lay some groundwork. I came into this because I feel like that's important. You guys have been so complimentary, and the Emmys, and yes, we're very proud of that. But I came into this knowing nothing, man. So day one of Spirit Juice, I had a camera from Best Buy that was like a couple $100s. I didn't know how to even open it. I didn't own Final Cut. I had iMovie that I was okay at, and I had no experience schooling wise for filmmaking, graphic design, anything. So I don't want to say I fell into it, because it was an intentional, like, okay, I was 22. I was like, okay, I feel God's calling me to this. I was able to do a little bit, and I knew God was going to help me, learn the rest. But I didn't, it wasn't like I had all this knowledge and was like, okay, I'm going to choose to do this. I was trying my best with what I had. Documentaries, things were the things that people were hiring us for. So I was trying to learn that as best I could. And then when we were able to do narrative stuff, I tried to learn that as best I could. But going to your specific thing for documentaries, that it's such an important thing, depending on what you're doing, it's getting it right. Like where there's, every documentary sort of has a narrative to it, or a certain story to it, a certain angle. And so, I would say the best documentary presents the information to you, but also guide you to a place where, it's not just a bunch of facts. It's not just a Wikipedia page on someone. It's a story on someone, but it's the balance of like their story, but their reality, and not really the filmmaker's perception of it, and trying to present, what it actually is. And to do that and balance a story is a tricky line to do. And so that takes some crafting, but, I find it rewarding seeing real life people, in a different light, and especially ones that are doing extraordinary things. So,
well, I think Rob, that's just perfect. The difference between story and life, and then Wikipedia kind of propositions. Because as we're thinking about this and storytelling, I thought, God doesn't do stuff randomly. I'm committed to that. And we have 4 Gospels. Right? But, Gospels aren't propositional accounts as much as Dominican philosophers or us. We might think like, oh, cool, let's just, get some propositions out of this, and some facts, what's true. But they're stories, so the fundamental scriptural revelation of God, one in the Old Testament, is a story, basically. Stories, a bunch of stories put together, this sort of thing. But then when Christ incarnates, of course, he is the Word, and he's the storyteller. But our account, he didn't stick around. Like, I don't know, he's here in the sacraments, of course, but he didn't stick around to keep telling stories. He left stories, the Gospels. And these are not just a bunch of, it would be weird if, like, Thomas Jefferson did this and tore it up and, like, to collect a bunch of facts that'd be interesting to you. But it's like, no, they are stories, and you don't reduce them to certain points, but you want to live through them. And the Catholic Church, I think, does this through the liturgical seasons. Like, you live. You're not just hearing the stories, but you're embodying them, kind of going along with them. And I like the documentary idea of seeing us as Christ followers in a way, that you're trying to tell the story of how they're kind of following along, literally following along in their lives with not just the truths of the faith, but how those look like in action with gospel conformity.
Yeah, there's we've had some really powerful stories that we've been able to tell. And the stories themselves, if you were to just tell some of the facts of the story, you'd get shit. Like I'm thinking about one in particular. It was a young man, Kendrick Castile. He was in Colorado. Basically, it was a school shooting, and he sacrificed his life for his friends. He like essentially jumped on the shooter, and he was a Catholic. He was strong in his faith. He was a Knight of Columbus, or he was trying to be that. And so that story, you just tell some of the facts. Like right now, you're probably like, wow, that's like pretty impactful. But when you're able to tell that story in a storytelling manner, you're able to dive just so deep into like the viewer's heart and just really understand the motivation and the different aspects of the story. Or another one where a woman's husband was murdered, and she forgave the guy that, they caught him, and she forgave that. Just hearing like how she did it, why she did it on the jury stand, and you're able to just take all those pieces together that like otherwise live independently, collect it into one thing, and just line it up in that perfect order. It's kind of like, so my son's really into Legos right now. I would almost say, and I don't know if this is the best analogy, but you have a bucket full of Legos. They're there. It's the Legos. But if you construct it in a very unique, specific way, it becomes something beautiful that they're still Legos, but it's in a way that just drives it. And you're like, wow, and I think that's the power of documentary storytelling. It all exists, but you construct it in a way that can really touch a viewer.
Yeah.
That's
well,
awesome.
Before we take a break, I want just to talk about that for just one second. Comment from the philosophical angle is, I think what you're I think clarifying is like, I mean, the form of a living thing, like you can describe in a book a plant or an animal or something, and its parts statically. But when you're trying to catch in a documentary, is its movement, its living. You're trying to catch the form of it. We'd say in kind of philosophical terms, that the thing that makes it, that animates it, that makes it alive, such that then you can see it in action and experience it as a living event, as opposed to just proposition. So I think that's brilliant.
All right. Well, we're gonna take a quick break and then pick it up, and we'll talk a little more about storytelling in our society and some of the work that you got going on. So sit tight, and we'll be back in a few.
You are listening to Godsplaining. Visit us at godsplaining.org to listen to our episodes, shop our store, and donate to our podcast. All gifts go to improving the podcast and bringing the gospel to more listeners. Thanks for your support.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on this episode of Guestsplaining. I'm Father Joseph Anthony Kress with Father Bonaventure Chapman. We're joined by Rob Kaczmark from Spirit Juice Studios, and we're talking about this art of storytelling in the work of Rob and his team at Spirit Juice, and how they are doing documentary work and showing how the faith is lived out in different followers of our Lord in the life of Catholics throughout the world, and using this beautiful art form. One of the things I want to ask you, Rob, is like, basically why are good storytellers necessary right now in our society? I mean, we see so many things. We're in a very heavily information based society. Everything has to be where there's numbers and there's facts, and we can get anything in a moment, in an instant, but yet we still see that people want stories, from the documentary work that's very popular on YouTube, or for crying out loud, that top bar of every Instagram page is called Instagram stories. Like, it's called stories for a reason, but like, why do you think there's a need for good storytellers right now in our society?
And people crave stories. People want to be entertained, but it's not just entertainment for entertainment. People want to hear a good story. I mean, it's why films like Star Wars, has stand the test of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking the 4, 5, and 6.
You don't like 1, 2, and 3?
We knew that.
Actually, we got to go down Star Wars for a minute. I don't mind. 1, 2, and 3 are fine. I'll give you this for like anyone cares about Rob's things on Star Wars. 1, 2, and 3 are fine because they were made together. It's a story that's like 7, 8, and 9 were just like, how about this, then that, and then this? There was like no connection. And so actually, maybe this does illustrate the point. The story of 4, 5, and 6 connect. But the point being of why we're talking about this now is that like people want good stories. They crave it. And not only they crave it, but they're attracted to something that brings them in. And so there's a quote that I'm going to butcher, and I really wish I would have looked it up, but something about who tells the stories like shaped the world. Someone important said it, and they said it a lot better than that. But
I think Rob Kaczmark said that. You know.
I want to say it was like, oh gosh, it was a famous person that said it. And so
Rob, yeah. Well, just remember, anytime someone says X person said this, it's almost always not actually what the person said. So you would not be, like Edmund Burke, for evil to triumph, it just means good men to do nothing. Never said it. Said a bunch of things kind of like it. Never said that. Oh, that's true for almost every sentence. So you're in good shape about this. Who tells the story controls the world. That's good enough.
Yeah, good. And I think with good intentions, right? I mean, like, I feel that if you are, if you're talented if God's blessed you with storytelling abilities, with creative things, I feel like it's your duty to better mankind, and for my personal life, it's to express the church in this field and show it, in its true light. It's like, talking about the faith. You could say how great the faith is, how good God is, but it's only until you feel God in your own life, move in your own life. It's a totally different thing. But stories can help fill that gap. A story is a way that you can show how God can move in someone's life, and it could go from nowhere to somewhere really fast. And so I think that's the power of it, and that's why I feel so compelled to do what I do.
Now, Rob, so we can dig in a little bit on stories. Everyone kind of knows, of course, what a story is. It's a thing that has a beginning, middle, and end. But a worm has that too. And then so there are traditional ways of talking about.
You're funny.
Well,
this guy.
And I mean, Aristotle has particular ways of talking about poetics and rhetoric about what kind of consists of a story. But for you, what are you looking for in a story? Like, are you looking for when you're coming up with a story, trying to figure out how am I going to tell the story of this man, this woman, this experience? Are there things you go to? Is each one so individual that you're going to wait for the hook? Or do you have a sense of like, actually there's a universal quality to stories? They always have X, whatever that might be. What is it about? Where is the story for you?
So there's a couple of things. One, and this is a little bit more just broad picture. I love contrast in story, complement and contrast. So we'll just take it visually. So a DP, a director of photography, or a cinematographer will often look at an image and say, where's the black in the image, right? So where's the black, meaning like there's obviously usually a lot of light in most stuff, but where's the dark image going to be? Because if you don't have dark, you're not going to have contrast. And so that is a framework for just visually what you're seeing things. I think just the story needs to have contrast. It needs to have, like a good villain has contrast. They're not just bad. I mean, I think it's a reason why we'll talk about, another bit, Marvel, right? The Thanos, like Thanos was,
yes.
He had good in him, right? Like, he did, like Darth Vader had good, like there, so good, like good storytelling has contrast, and contrast that feels real. So for me, contrast has to be a backbone in any storytelling. But then there's things that I like, and you can call them, I don't know if you can call them tropes, but there's different things that I gravitate to. And it's the moment in a film where all hope seems lost. And then the protagonist is able to like, just like I love it in one of my favorite ones that I just think about a lot is in The Matrix, when the bullets are flying at Neo. I'm kind of spoiler, but 1999, if you haven't seen it in 20 years.
Don't worry.
Yeah, we're good.
That's your fault. That's on you, not on Rob, okay? This is a spoiler alert. That's on you.
But he finally realizes that you think it's everything's going to end. The bullets are coming at him just like, and bullets time. And he's just like, no. And they just fall to the ground. And like, it's like that when you overcome that, and when the hero can do that, I feel like that, for me, that gives me chills. It gives me, like, I love seeing stories like that. And I love to be able to tell a story that gives the viewer that same experience.
No, and that's, I mean, for the Christian story, right? This is the resurrection, the death and resurrection, right? That ultimate kind of hope, despair to hope kind of thing. And I always get, I imagine, for me, it's always the story of when Peter looks in, when Peter stops, so John beats him, and then Peter gets there, and Peter walks in the first time he's going in there, and he sees it, and Jesus isn't there. And I have this like visual sense, if I were going to do like a story movie, like everything would change at that point. Nothing mattered before. Everything changed entirely because this was, the whole world is different. Everything is different. But you're right about that total. it has to be that it's a contrast against something that's fundamental to the Christian story and fundamental to that your storytelling is Christian in shape. And I like that formal aspect of it.
But that's every encounter with Jesus in the Gospels with each individual person, right? You can see that with the woman at the well. You can see that with the woman in the hemorrhages, or the centurion and things like that. Like each individual has that moment with the Lord, and the reality is that continues even to our present day. And like what you're doing is telling those individual stories as if it's a continuation of the Gospels, because these people are still meeting Christ, and then they have that moment, and then that's a conversion, or that's the active choice to do something Christian, like forgive the murderer of your spouse or things like that. Like, so it's so funny because it's like you see it's interwoven all the way into the Gospels, but in one sense it's continually and perpetuated by the telling of our own story and our own relationship with the Lord. So yeah, I think another question I want to ask you, Rob, is we're emphasizing stories, but to somebody who wants to tell their story or tell somebody else's, like what would be kind of your top 2 tips for becoming a better storyteller, no matter your medium, whether it's through photography, or if it's through doing videos or writing or things like that. Like when you're approaching, like, how do we become better storytellers? Because as this episode has gone along, and it seems very important to our life as human beings and extremely important to our life as Christians. So how do we become better storytellers?
I got 2 tips. First is do a lot of work. You have to do a lot of it. I remember when I was first started and kind of our first like short film came about, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want my first short film to be this. And I was like, so the second tip is lose your ego. Okay. So don't worry about, like, do a lot of work and lose your ego, because that's the only way you're going to learn to be a good storyteller. I'm telling you flat out, like, I was not a good storyteller when Spirit Juice first started, just wasn't. And even before that. And like, it takes time, and it takes, and this is advice to, if you want to do anything well. I mean, if you want to play the drums well, if you want to, paint well, anything at all, you got to do it a lot, and you have to enjoy doing it bad to be able to do it good. Because everyone right now, like, I would love to be able to play the guitar and just shred. I can't play the guitar to save my life, but I don't really want to play the guitar. Like, I want to do it, but I don't really. If I really wanted it, I would put the time in. I'd practice every day. So same goes for storytelling. You may want to tell a good story, but if you got to ask yourself, do you really want to do it? And are you gonna do it bad and learn from that? And do a bad story. Okay, put it out. What did I learn? Okay, I'm gonna do this part better. Okay, do it again. I'm gonna do this part better. And eventually, you're gonna find all the gaps that you have, and your stories are gonna be pretty darn good. It's very rare. People like to point out at like some of the top filmmakers. I would say Quentin Tarantino is probably the one. Not talking about really the content of what he produces, but at a young age, he was just like really talented. So there's a few one-off crazy raw talents, and people like to point at those people and say, oh, I'm not them, so I'm not going to do it good. No, most of the filmmakers were terrible too when they first started. It just takes time.
Yeah, it's anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, as G.K. Chesterton may or may not have said. And it just takes, who knows? Father Gregory Pine would know. And it just takes time. You have to feel free to fail at almost anything. This is true in general point. Now, what I want to ask another question, and this is, I don't know if this is the right question, but you're an expert in this field, so I need to ask about this. So Christianity is about storytelling. It's crucial. The Christian story has this thing. It's continuing. We meet these kind of experiences, especially with the saints. Why are most saint movies so awfully bad?
Yes.
Like, why are Catholic movies just almost impossible to watch until you remake most of them as spirituals? Like, have you pondered the fact that you have at one hand like the best story and therefore the best imitative story that you can kind of work out that this should be, and yet almost every saint movie, God love these saint movies, I really do, not attractive film. I'd rather watch Captain America a second time, maybe a fourth time. You know what? What is it about? What's going on, Rob?
I have a theory.
Okay.
I have a theory. So you look at the best Catholic art hundreds of years ago, or there's the best art hundreds of years ago. It was Catholic art, right? And we see a lot of that in the Vatican, different spots. What did it take to make that happen? It was talent and very inexpensive tools, a paintbrush, some paints, a big thing of marble, a chisel, but it wasn't that complex. You look at the modern age in creating, let's look at just film, right? What does it take to make a film? We talked about that earlier. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of pieces, a lot of time. And I think people would be shocked if they saw a budget of they saw their favorite film and they saw the budget breakdown and they go, they spent that much on that? You got to be kidding me. Well, they did, it's just how it is. And so it's how it works. And so as that became a reality, I think Catholics leaned and became very generous of it's all about the message. It's the message that's the most important. We're telling the saint's life. It's still pretty good. Yeah. And they lost that, that being the quality was, if you don't, yes, the message is the most important, but I think a real close second is the vehicle that goes in. So we've lost it as a priority, and really we lost it so much where it's not even it doesn't, most people don't care, or for a long time. It's starting to come back. And also I would say what's helping that is just where technology is. So, for a long time, if you wanted to shoot something that looks like a film, you'd have to shoot on film, and it would cost a lot of money per day and a lot of people. But now, since that gap's closing and you can get pretty close to that with a lot less money, you're seeing more and more fruits of that. And we're a fruit of that. I mean, we are where we are because technology. If we were just shooting still on film, I don't think we'd be putting out the content we are. I mean, we're able to sort of invest in high quality equipment and then leverage that. I mean, leverage that in the sense that okay, so one of the top line cameras is an Alexa Mini. It's very expensive. It's very expensive to buy, to rent. We have it, and we're able to shoot projects on that a client wouldn't be normally they would not say, oh, I want to shoot that in Alexa Mini, but we feel no, we want to tell a story in this high quality. And so that really is how we're able to do what we do, is by owning such great stuff, investing into that, and investing in the people to sort of craft that. And so to answer your question though, it lost priority. It lost priority for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And Bishop Barron has made this to kind of a Balthasarian theme of getting beauty back into it and putting that's part of the message, and that can be the vehicle of the message. We could talk a lot about that, but I think you're right. And that actually, that gives me hope of there'll be better Catholic. In 100 years, saints movies will be things that people want to see. That's great. I know, Rob, we're running out of time, but I know you want to talk about a particular content program that's coming up, and that I think our listeners will be excited about, no matter what their age, especially our youngest listeners. So before Father Joseph Anthony, has final questions, what's coming up? What can people be really excited about with Spirit Juice?
So we're really excited. We launched a Kickstarter for Juice Box, which is a Catholic kid show. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And since my 5-year-old was born, I was always okay, I'm going to show some good Catholic content out there and for kids. And there really wasn't.
Surprise, there's nothing good out there.
Yeah. And the most I found was a DVD at my local Catholic bookstore, but there just wasn't. And as a parent, you need stuff on demand. I got to they're freaking out. I got to put something on. And there's plenty of good kids content, but I feel there's not really any good Catholic kids content to teach the faith. Because then it's also I want to teach him about Mass. He's got questions. I want to get him more involved in praying. And it's I've done youth ministry for a long time. So a high schooler, sure, I could talk about my faith. A 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and so there was a need. As a parent, I wanted this. I thought someone was going to make it. No one did. And I was God's you got to make it. So we have Steve Arasano. He's an amazing Catholic singer-songwriter. We have Melinda Simon, these two great hosts. It's kind of a mix between Blue's Clues and Mr. Rogers. And we're teaching the faith to young kids, preschool, kindergarten. So we need all the help we can get because we're doing it right, and it's expensive. We're asking for $180,000. So, but we're doing it to the level that it's going to look like the same stuff that you're watch on whatever your streaming platform. And the thing is, we're doing it. It's going to go out on YouTube for free. So any parent anywhere can access it. No paywall, no nothing.
Wow.
Because as a parent, you need something right away. It's what's a login for that? And no, it's just YouTube free. That's it. Nothing. So any support that anyone could give, I'm so appreciative of.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for doing that, because any kind of help for our Catholic parents and handing on the faith is always going to be great. So we will put the link to that Kickstarter campaign in the description on YouTube and on all of our episodes wherever you are listening. So check out the link in the description. Help support Spirit Juice and Rob in making this content for the youngest Catholics out there who need the greatest help. But Rob, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you. Maybe next time we'll talk about your favorite Marvel movies, or I don't know. We'll go in that direction next time.
Yeah,
Love it. Man, I could talk for days. No, but seriously, thank you guys.
Yeah. No, we're doing Father Gregory Pine are doing a Marvel movie episode at some point, but I feel like that has to be actually a Guestsplaining episode now with you on, since you've got lots of things to say about it too. But no, Rob, it's an absolute delight. Congratulations on the work Spirit Juice is doing, and anyone who can support, please do. And that's linked to the Catholic Kids show, the Juice Box. If you don't have $1 million, you might know someone who does, and you should give them that link so they can help out.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you for your constant support for us. Until the next episode, thank you very much. God bless, and we'll see you.
Thanks for listening to Godsplaining, a work of the Dominican friars of the province of St. Joseph. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Leave a review on your podcast app, and visit us at godsplaining.org.